Prick up your ears.
The sound of DTM.
My car sounds like music to my ears.
My favorite sound when the car is leaving the pits.
My favorite sound, the cheering of the fans.
Crank it up. My favorite sound? The silence before the lights go green.
Full blast.
Downshifting from full speed. When I rev up my engine to its absolute limit. Too close to cool. Cheering on the podium.
Be aware.
It's gonna be loud.
Good afternoon and welcome to Zandvoort. It's qualifying about to get underway for race 9 in DTM for season 2016, where we have in the point standings at the moment just 5 points covering the top 3 drivers, 1 driver each from the manufacturers, BMW, Audi and Mercedes-Benz. It's Marco Wittmann right at the top of the points at the moment as our helicopter flies into the Zandvoort circuit across the North Sea and the beach here at Zandvoort. And then, as you can see, it's unveiled this real old school 4.3 kilometer circuit, which really will test the DTM drivers. Gary Paffett then. The Euronics Mercedes AMG C63 DTM. Stalwart DTM driver, his best finish was race 2 at Lausitzring this season with a P5. We know that he's capable of so much more than that. Mattias EKSTROM in the Red Bull Audi RS5 DTM, just ahead of this qualifying session getting underway. Mattias at the moment sits P9 in the points. And there is the Marco Wittmann car. And Marco Wittmann himself inside the car there comes to Zandvoort with a 2-point lead over Eduardo Mortara. Some brilliant shots that we're bringing you here of the tension and the anxiety and the anticipation ahead of the qualifying session about to get underway. Super slow-mo shots here. Absolutely brilliant to see. Free practice sessions have been very interesting as well as Dr. Wolfgang Ulrich from Audi makes his way down the pit lane. Gary Paffett, look, quickest. Then it was Marco Wittmann, then Daniel Juncadella before we saw the first Audi, Mattias EKSTROM, P4. Now, Leo Gorman is alongside me. We can never read too much into the free practice sessions, can we?
People tell us that, often with a nod and a wink. But someone did kind of jokingly say to me after free practice too earlier on, it's like, you know, a place like Zandvoort, quality matters as opposed to quality matters.
Yes.
But it is actually quite a key point because this is not a circuit, as I've said with other categories, that you can freely overtake on here, there and everywhere. You really need to put a lot of effort into qualifying. We still have some very, very, very good races here, and I'm sure we're going to see a number of quite intelligent and intricate strategies develop over the weekend.
Sure,
but you know
right.
what? If the best way to win a race, start on pole.
Yeah, of course. Eduardo Mortara, look at the focus in the eyes there. We saw Lucas Auer climbing into his car, and this is the Timo Glock BMW. Former Formula One star, of course, Timo Glock, really enjoying his time in DTM. So we're talking about the circuit, and it was the circuit that was very, very pleasing to BMW, the manufacturer, last season. Is it going to be the case this season? I'm not so sure.
I don't think so.
I spoke to Uli Fritz last night, who just happened to be in conversation with me and Maro Angle. And we were talking about the dominance in practice sessions. And he said, Dave, practice is practice. Quali is something completely different. But
yeah, radio loud and clear. So we will go out 3 minutes. So in 2.5 minutes we will go out.
I think the interesting...
Then 2 time laps. Then we have a break of...
I think the interesting thing, Dave, is the regulations changed slightly with regards to weight penalties and whatnot over the course of the season. So we're not really going to see such huge domination as we saw in several races last year. Particularly, I think was it race 2 when BMW took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah,
but then their 8th driver, who I can't remember which one it was, took P9.
yeah,
And we're not going to see that kind of performance anymore. I don't think where the new weight penalty regulations have ensured a somewhat more open grid, shall we say.
yeah, and it's working really well. I mean,
And that's better for the sport.
of course it is. I've spoken to a number of the drivers who, at one with the, some are saying it's not altogether fixed yet, but it's a sight closer than it was. Maxime Martin, we can see there. And we heard the team radio and Lucas Auer being advised exactly what the strategy is going to be for qualifying. One of the huge advantages of DTM is the team radio is absolutely live. You're hearing it at the same time the drivers are.
As we found out at Red Bull Ring last year.
It's absolutely live. Christian VIETORIS. And there is Martin TOMCZYK on his way out of the pit lane then. Here we go. Let's get qualifying underway. Let's get some cars on track. And the 2 pink liveried cars of Christian VIETORIS and Lucas Auer are waiting there in the garage. Look at the sense of anticipation on the engineers and the drivers, of course, already strapped into those cars. And Robert Wickens is going to be the first that we're going to put the clock on, and here comes Robert Wickens now, bouncing his way up towards the Tarzan turn 1, which is actually cambered. It's almost banked rather than cambered, and it draws you almost to the grass on the outside of that turn, Lee.
I think the key thing, Dave, you mentioned we're into qualifying, is we'll see some banker laps, drivers really putting some quick laps in, getting used to their machines in quali trim, as it were. But I think it's when there'll be a small break for drivers in the middle of the session, and they'll come out and we'll see the real hot laps.
But we've seen that strategy not work sometimes, Lee, because they can't get clear space on the circuit.
You don't get clear space on the circuit, or maybe you time your lap wrong and you actually cross the line after the checkered flag comes out. This is all about precision.
Absolutely, and it's as much about the teams advising the drivers as it is the drivers, and working out that there's as much thought process goes into the strategy for qualifying as there is for the race as well. Robert Wickens is going to give us the first timed lap that we can use as a benchmark, if you like, for this qualifying session that we bring to you live from the Zandvoort circuit here in the Netherlands. We're about 30 minutes, I guess, from central Amsterdam. And this is always a favourite among the drivers and the race fans as well, who flock to this holiday resort in the Netherlands. So it's going to be a 1:31.482 for Robert Wickens that gives us our, as I say, benchmark time from which to watch. Daniel Juncadella was very, very quick in points during free practice too. Here comes Antonio Felix da Costa then. The BMW driver who's done best of anyone in Sector 1 and Sector 2. At the moment, it's Wickens, Paffett. Then it's Esteban OCON, who had an off in free practice too. Then it's Juncadella. Then it's Timo Glock. So 4 Mercedes at the top of the chart at the moment. Here comes the BMW of Antonio Felix da Costa.
Sector 1, pick Sector 2.
And da Costa immediately goes to the top of the chart, 1:31.390. Here comes Paul de Resta now.
I think one of the important things, Dave, is to remember this being an old school circuit that it actually is. You're not going to see much in the way, say, of time has been deleted, as he would say, at the likes of Hockenheim, because you've had all 4 wheels off the track. At Zandvoort, you get all 4 wheels off the track, you're in the gravel trap.
You're absolutely right, and it's interesting you make that point because there has been... Whoa, as Paul RESTA gets the back end stepped out there, and look at that, drifting it around that turn as he tried to control that car. That's really compromised. That's compromised that lap, Lee. That lap is thrown away.
Thrilling to watch, but not necessarily the fastest way to go about it. It's very much the Gilles Villeneuve way of driving, only in a touring car.
Right, Robert Wickens then was quickest of everyone in Sector 1, but compromised in Sector 2 and Sector 3, which means he doesn't improve on his current P2 position.
He dropped
now. Confirm box. You are purple in every sector. Apart from Sector 2, there's 2 tenths.
Wickens actually dropped a second to Da Costa in Sector 2, so that would explain a huge chunk.
And this is why. Out wide, one wheel on the curbs, almost on the grass, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't think he necessarily lost time from going off, but I think I would assume he's actually probably lifted off through the middle of the corner. Oh, and off for Christian VIETORIS.
No, that's not Christian VIETORIS. That is Maximilian Goetz.
That's Maxi Goetz, isn't it? He's gone off on the back end of the circuit.
Okay, Max, we saw the spin. Box is lap,
Oh
box.
no, and there's debris being put all over the circuit now.
And he's gone backwards into the barrier. We'll see what happened now. He's lost it over the brow, and
it got rear wheels on into the gravel, hadn't he? And then into the barrier.
it's not significant damage for Goetz unless the actual wheel has taken a hit.
Are you okay? How's the car?
Well,
yeah, feels okay. I don't know. A bit on the rear, turning in, a bit of oversteering.
well, you say that's not significant,
box.
Lee, as he's told to box. They're not going to be able to repair that damage to the rear of the car in the space of this qualifying session. And actually, these cars are very, very aero dependent.
They're very, very aero dependent. In one sense, Goetz could look at it and say that he's lucky that he hasn't actually damaged the actual suspension, which would completely rule him out now. But if it's just a bit of aero damage, they might still try and get him out, if only to put in a much quicker time. He's got a 1 minute 32.318, which is 1 second down on the current poleman, Da Costa. This section's only going to get much faster.
Of course it is. And
so
we have only 12 minutes and a few seconds.
If they send Goetz out, they may just tell him to live with it.
Box this left.
And there you can see the extent of the damage there to the rear of the Maximilian Goetz car.
He got away with that. That could have been a much bigger crash.
Well, it looked like he got the rear wheels out onto the grass and onto the gravel, and that meant that Maximilian Goetz, here you can see it, that's where his sideways look.
Yeah, he's lost that long before he comes into the corner. And you know what? He's lucky he didn't actually hit because if he'd hit the tire barrier, it would it softens the impact for a driver, but it would have done a lot.
It would him in.
It may well have done a lot more damage to the actual car itself.
On the Armco itself, he slid, didn't he? So you're absolutely right. So,
and I think he probably scrubbed off a little bit of speed before he'd actually hit the Armco as well. So probably luckier really, and he should have been.
Okay, so what have we got so far? Well, we've got Antonio Felix Da Costa, who's unbeaten at the moment on a 1:31.390. We then have a huge trail of Mercedes-Benz cars, then another BMW, before we see the first Audi, which is now, it was Timo Scheider, it's now Nico Müller, whose P8 is the quickest in the Audis at the moment. Da Costa for BMW is fastest, 1:31.390. Then it's VIETORIS and WICKENS. They're split by Marco Wittmann. Then it's
box in this lap, P4 at the moment.
Interestingly, we've still not.
We're struggling with too much combined traction issue.
On board with Esteban Mortara as we listen to the team radio for Marco Wittmann, who's currently P4. Eduardo Mortara is... we've got the sector clock on Eduardo Mortara, who of course is P2 in the points going into the race to come this evening. And this is the qualifying that sets the grid for that race this evening. Lee.
Interesting, we haven't really seen Farfus. I think Farfus and Ekstrom are already doing their first time laps now, 10 minutes into the race. They're leaving it a little bit late. Rocky has only just set his first, ROCKENFELLER has only just set his first time lap now, bringing him up to P11.
Here comes Nico Müller then, of course, celebrating his first win in DTM, which is hugely important and something he'll remember for a very long time. Nico Müller taking that win, of course, at the Norris Ring. And he's boxing and coming in. So too is Maxime Martin, the BMW. Also BMW is Bruno Spengler. He's staying out there. He's currently P10. First sector was a PB. Second sector was not an improvement. What can he do through the third sector? Bruno Spengler is currently P10 for the former champion. The BMW Bank livery that Bruno Spengler retains for season 2016 heads towards the timing line now. 1:31.390 is the fastest time. And Bruno Spengler improves 6 places, goes up to P4 now, despite the fact that the middle sector was not brilliant.
Good effort from the former champion. That's a very, very solid time. Only 3/10 down on current poleman and fellow BMW driver Da Costa.
Box, box, box. Car balance.
Are the BMW...
Too much understeering, the fast stuff. Too much understeering, turn 7. I think I see issue. Too much understeer.
Biggest issue then, too much understeer for Bruno Spengler as Mattias EKSTROM is on a hot lap here. Look, PB, Sector 1, Sector 2. It was P13 for Mattias EKSTROM as he heads towards the timing line now. 1:31.390 is the time for Mattias EKSTROM to beat. But he doesn't beat it, but he does improve a number of places and goes to P6.
Box. Good job. P6 at the moment. P6, it's really tight up to P3, and then Da Costa and VIETORIS are more away.
I think Ekstrom, he's...
Miguel is behind you on the outlap. Means box now and take care in Sector 3.
Ekstrom will be hoping for a much better weekend here at Zandvoort than he had at Norris Ring 3 weeks ago, which I think most racing drivers, and I think Eki mentioned it himself over the broadcast to Verena, that he had an absolute nightmare a couple of races, and so he'll be hoping for some good results here.
Ironically, it was battling with Robert Wickens, this man, that caused one of the problems for Eki at Norris Ring, and he was the first to admit that he apologised for taking out this man, Christian VIETORIS, but he said, I'm not apologising for barging with Robert Wickens because we were fighting physically, but fighting fair as far as I'm concerned. If he's going to take it to me, I'm going to give it back. And he was very stoic in his defence of that.
Okay, I have you against VIETORIS.
So Robert Wickens, live team radio.
Do you remember after...
It's all in turn 2.
After the free practice session, when the BMW, Jens Market was saying it was only practice, you don't need to worry about the times.
Wow.
But there just happens to be a BMW man in P1, P4, P5, and Maxime Martin then in P8. Do you think maybe they were just fibbing ever so slightly?
Well, time will tell. This, the first time lap from Miguel Molina. So Miguel then in the Audi. Took that win, of course, at the Lausitz Ring. And 40.282 is the sector time to beat. Well, he's 2/10 down on that. 40.533 for Miguel. And I saw him briefly this morning, didn't have a chance to have a conversation with him. But it was a torrid time for Molina at the Norris Ring, P18 and P14. And interestingly, you go back to Lausitz Ring for Molina, and it was a win in race 1 and P19 in race 2. You know, you can take nothing from race 1 and for that to give you a form guide necessarily for race 2. Race 1, may I remind you, to come a little bit later on this afternoon. And this the qualifying for that, and we've got about 5 minutes and 15 seconds.
Improvement sector 1, minimum of 3/10.
For the guys to set the grid for race number 1.
I think the key thing to take out of the championship so far is we got Marco Wittmann leading the points.
Yes.
But you know he's only had one win and some solid top sixes here and there, and a couple of no scores, I believe. It's not exactly like anyone's running away or we're having a championship dominated by a couple of drivers taking all the wins. This is very much...
it's so close and it's so tight, and you know, you make the point there that Marco Wittmann can lead the points by dint of the fact he's had a win and he's banked some points. There's only 2 points.
We've had 8 races, and if you think it's 25 points for a win, so you're looking at 200 points there. Yeah, Wittmann has got 75. Mortara's only 73. The rest is 70. It's not, you know, there are a lot of drop scores there in the top. This championship is still very wide open.
It's very open, very open. So Miguel then on his second lap, 40.4, 23.9, sector 1 and sector 2. P13 at the moment. The session at the moment with under 4 minutes left to run is led by Antonio Felix da Costa with Christian VIETORIS and Robert Wickens P2 and P3. Bruno Spengler is P4. Then it's Marco Wittmann. The best Audi is P6. Mattias EKSTROM. Is Miguel going to improve on his P13 time? There is no doubt of that, I'm sure. Indeed, so he now becomes the fastest Audi. P6.
Track's beginning to fill up again, Dave.
Oh,
Molina really let his back end slide.
Miguel currently P6. The others going out.
Okay, Maximilian Gertz then is back out with that damaged rear end. And he's done PB, Sector 1 and Sector 2. Here comes Maximilian Gertz now. And he's gone fastest to 1:31.389.
Top spot.
But look how close.
1,000th a second.
1,000th. Maximilian Gertz with a damaged rear end.
I think Mercedes may have just discovered an upgrade for their car.
Here's Adrien TAMBAY then. He's done PB Sector 1 better than anyone in Sector 2.
But I wonder, Dave, now that more and more cars coming out for the second run, the track is rubbering in very much so as TAMBAY coming up to the start-finish line to set his second time of the session.
And it's P1 for Adrien TAMBAY.
I think these times are going to absolutely collapse in a few moments. Wonderful lap as it was for Guts with a damaged car, but I still think he'll probably drop down the order somewhat. But we will see, because almost everyone, if not everyone, actually I think everyone is out on the track right now.
Which makes that track very, very busy indeed. It's finding clear space, clear air now. TAMBAY is fastest. Gertz is second fastest. Da Costa is third fastest. All 3 manufacturers in the top 3. Audi, Mercedes, BMW.
This could well come down to last man over the line to finish to start the last lap.
Absolutely. Here comes Jamie Green then. 40.047 in Sector 1 for Jamie Green then.
There's only 2 minutes left in the session. We're going to see an awful lot of fast times being set in the next 3 minutes or so.
PB in Sector 2. Look for Jamie Green lead. This is going to be one of those qualifying sessions which goes right to the wire in terms of excitement, and before we can even begin to think about how the grid is going to look for the race to come a little bit later this afternoon. Jamie Green heads towards the timing line now then. P21 it was.
1 minute.
Now it's P1.
1 minute, 30.9. And that is with Green, despite him losing a little bit of time in the final sector, going out wide over the long final corner. Timo Glock, 22nd. He's got 2 personal bests. This is not going to be a fastest overall at the moment, but it will take him further up the grid. Let's see how far. The rest has improved as well, up to P15. Glock, meanwhile,
it's P2, 1:31.173. But Jamie Green is still the only sub 1:31 time at 1:39.53. Here comes Robert Wickens.
Rocky up to P4, down to P5 as Da Costa also improves. They're all going to get one more lap. Now Wickens coming over the line.
Wickens goes P1, 1:37.27. He's taken a full 2/10 out of Jamie Green's time.
2 purple sectors over that lap with a personal best in the middle sector. They're really struggling to match the fastest middle sector that was set earlier in the session. Here's Edo Mortara, currently 23rd, 2 personal bests. How far will he improve on this lap as TOMCZYK goes 10th? Mortara
goes P4. So Wickens Now VIETORIS has gone P2. Gary Paffett, P4, my goodness.
Ocon, P7. Ekstrom just behind in P8. Our P20.
We've got, Justin, we've got a yellow flag in turn 13. But that's quickly lifted. Nico Müller now. Race winner, of course.
He's lost a lot of time somewhere there.
Yes, but he's on another lap. He crossed the line, didn't he?
Well, I think if he's lost a lot of time in the final sector, which is where the yellow flag was, he's probably had enough and rejoined the circuit. Anyway, the clock has run down. It's now checkered flag for everyone who comes across the line. These are your final laps.
So Marco Wittmann then P3. He's on another lap, so it's Wickens, VIETORIS, Wittmann, Paffett, Green, Mortara, Ocon, Ekstrom, Glock and Tambay, the top 10 at the moment.
The RESTA takes the checkered flag, but he's down in 20th place. He will not be happy with that at all. Wittmann slightly blocked there as Da Costa. Sorry, Da Costa slightly blocked there maybe.
Wittmann goes P2 for BMW. Christian VIETORIS, PB in Sector 1, Sector 2 wasn't good.
No, I think he's lost a bit there. Wickens at the moment with a 1 minute. With a 1 minute 30.7. He holds the top spot, but VIETORIS is not going to beat it.
No. So Christian VIETORIS then, who is P3.
P3 at the moment. Good job.
And he's boxing. So Wickens, Wittmann, VIETORIS, Paffett, Green, Mortara, Ocon, Da Costa, Ekstrom, Glock, Tambay, Martin.
An improvement for Ara, but he's still only P21. He's going to be very disappointed with that.
I love these qualifying sessions, really I do, because it's so much drama right at the end.
But Augusto Farfus last. That's an unusual starting position for. And yeah, Jamie Green.
Well, there you can see. Now that's where Maximilian Goertz had his off, isn't it? And Jamie Green managing to hold onto the car and control it. Whoa, that's
Marta.
That's Müller. That's
sorry,
Müller.
That's Muller's actually off.
Farfus and Spengler.
Ooh, I wonder if Spengler will maybe complain to the stewards about Farfus coming across on him.
There's a bit of Farfus's car there.
Yeah, I wonder, because Farfus did seem he held the middle of the road rather rigidly, shall we say.
I did speak to Robert Wickens earlier, and he had a wry smile on his face. I said, "You in a good place, Rob?" And he said, "You know." And clearly he is, isn't he? Because he's got pole for the race to come a little later this afternoon, Robert Wickens. So 137.27 for Robert Wickens, a 138.43 for Marco Wittmann.
And let's not forget, you know, the race later on today, even though it's shorter than tomorrow's pit stop race, it's still the same points.
Absolutely.
And Wickens P6, only 17 shy of Wittmann at the moment. You know what? That's tasty.
It's going to be a really, really interesting race as we watch the cars come into the pit lane. There is Marco Wittmann, and there is Robert Wickens, the top two in the qualifying, and that beautiful shot. And here we have the order: Robert Wickens, Marco Wittmann, Christian VIETORIS, Gary Paffett, Jamie Green, Eduardo Mortara, and Esteban OCON. Really good qualifying from Esteban OCON. Antonio Felix Da Costa, Mattias EKSTROM, and then Timo Glock, the top 10. Incidentally, Esteban OCON, as I mentioned earlier in the programme, had an off in FP2, so obviously got it all together now, and pretty sure that's the best qualifying we've seen from Esteban OCON, P7. Then the rest of the order there, qualifying for race 9 to come for DTM, as Robert Wickens pats his car with affection and says, "Well done."
Just to note, the incident between Farfus and Spengler has been reported to the stewards. Firstly, it looked as if there was a block, maybe, by Farfus, but then also contact. Spengler may run into the back of Farfus. We missed that because it just ran out of camera shot.
And that's an inter-brand argument, isn't it?
But it's unfortunate as well, because it's going to be a lower down discussion. Spengler's 17th, Farfus 24th. It's not going to be happy smiles between those two BMW drivers afterwards.
Drivers off to be weighed then, and you can see to the very left of your picture Paul di Resta, who's just walking towards the camera now, and Nico Müller there, the very tall Nico Müller.
P20 for di Resta. He's not going to be happy with that at all. Paffett, meanwhile, he's a guy with a smile on his face. He's fourth for this evening's race.
So all the drivers then making their way in and being weighed. Robert Wickens then with the crash helmet off now. Marco Wittmann is the man on the scales currently.
And to the left of the screen there, you got Mattias EKSTROM, who will be starting from P9 later on.
Super slow-mos to the top three from qualifying for this evening's race. Christian VIETORIS in the Mercedes-Benz. His 1:30.857 gives him P3. Marco Wittmann, who currently leads the Drivers' Championship by a mere 2 points, will be going from P2. His 1:30.843, sufficient to give him P2 on the grid, which, bear in mind here at Zandvoort, grid position 2 is not a bad place to be. However, the fastest driver was this man with a 1:30.727, Robert Wickens. Good effort from Robert Wickens then in qualifying to take P1.
I think Audi may be a little bit annoyed with that qualifying session. Their highest driver there is Green in P5 with Edo Matara just behind him. They would have expected or at least hoped to have at least one driver in the top 3 or top 4.
There's a very happy Canadian, Robert Wickens.
Definitely very, very happy with his performance, and rightly so. At a 1:30.727, it was more than a 1/10 advantage over Wittmann. And when the field is this close, to have that kind of advantage is that's a very, very good lap.
Yes, well done to Robert Wickens then, and we will see him on pole position. And there's Christian VIETORIS then in conversation. And just see in the back of the picture, Uli Fritz then from Mercedes-Benz, who will be pretty happy with the performance of his cars and drivers during the course of qualifying this afternoon, setting the grid for the race to come a little later this evening as
As a novel spectator.
Quite. Beaky. This is a fantastic track in terms of being very old school and very challenging, and therefore so looking forward to the race this afternoon. And Robert Wickens has given himself the best possible position by going from P1. However, as I mentioned, Lee, in the other categories that we've enjoyed the racing today, P1 hasn't necessarily been the place to be. That's where Robert Wickens is, though. Pole position for the Mercedes with Marco Wittmann, the points leader at the moment, going from P2. Then we find another 2 Mercedes locking out row 2. It's Christian VIETORIS and Gary Paffett. Before we see 2 Audis together, Jamie Green and Eduardo Mortara going from P5 and P6. Esteban OCON, good qualifying from him. P7, Antonio Felix da Costa is alongside him. Then we find on row 5, Mattias EKSTROM and Timo Glock, Audi and BMW together there. On the 6th row of the grid, it's Adrien TAMBAY and Maxime Martin. Before we find Daniel Juncadella and Maximilian Goertz, who had an off during that qualifying session but recovered. Martin TOMCZYK and Bruno Spengler on the 8th row. P17 goes the way of former champion Mike Rockenfeller, and P18 for former champion Timo Scheider. Then we see Paul de Resta. He'll be disappointed with P19, and Lucas Out equally so with P20. P21 belongs to the Brit driver Tom BLOMQVIST with Nico Muller, P22, and then right at the very back of the grid, it's Miguel MOLINA and Augusto Farfus. So the grid is set for the race to come a little bit later this afternoon. Early evening, in fact, and it's the shorter of the 2 DTM races, which makes it ever so exciting because an awful lot to be done in the case of this Zandvoort circuit. So, from Lee and from myself, thanks for now. Make sure you join us for the race this afternoon. Bye-bye.